But I'm happy with it all.
That's not my life. You know, the year that David Bell interviewed me, he interviewed this other guy. And that guy didn't for David, his biggest. And then Tony had a big panel. And with this kid, David was a witness at the trials on Court TV. And he talked about like every
Okay.
We've been in this office, he never.
Time to go to my car for a pen and a watch.
I have a pen.
Yeah.
Did you all have trouble finding parking when it was like there's graduation?
Oh, is that why there's so?
Yeah, I didn't realize there was graduation until
Did you already
right
get
before.
I left your validation on.
Right, thank you.
Surprise, 'cause usually
Okay. So I was like, well, wait, 5 minutes.
we moved, let's see. We moved.
Hi, I'm
Yeah,
waiting.
we were at Bunkerville, but if you, oh. No. Oh.
I really moved into the 60s.
We have met, I'm Wade. The name, nice to meet you.
I would have been perfectly happy staying where we were, but. I was mostly gone. Didn't know.
Every time there was a meeting about moving, there were like multiple meetings.
Amy Anderson.
Nice.
Things happen, right?
So, go on for the process. My impression was that was very useful. In terms of
Me too. Your Brown Act binder.
Yeah, I got my run at Wonder, yeah. We use all my meetings.
Your email said something about a Brown Act video that was searching my mailbox. I saw that harassment video of prevent workplace violence.
And I always have run back.
I didn't.
Was there
The one with
Did
the
you
city
guys
clerk,
have a link to
the
it?
city clerk,
Yeah.
that Nikema was talking
Yeah.
There's a
about.
boards and commissions one, and then somehow I got to the Brown Act one after.
Yeah, there's a
That was in the,
It's in one of the
email.
Yeah. We're not intending to give you a Brown Act training tonight. There is Brown Act training that happens, it's going to happen
there's also, is that the thing in August?
It happened in August, there's also training video, I mean, there's some very major basic things.
I'm not worried about it.
Yeah,
I've
okay.
actually many times before.
Yeah, that's-
Aware of it, I just wanted to do my homework and I couldn't find it. so-
Oh, okay, okay.
So you will let us know which ones we have to, I mean, I've already done the videos, and it said complete on there, but what other ones we have to do before, I mean, to start with, we're already caught up, right?
Yeah, I've been receiving notifications for those that haven't completed them all. I think, I have to look to see, I think there's only a few of you that still need to be completed. I was making a complete list from the clerk's office, but then, there'll be all boards, commissions, and committees will have a training in August. The date hasn't been set yet for that.
Okay, because I did the video, and then I looked at one slideshow or something, and it was just doing the same thing as the video.
That would be the one.
Yeah.
Okay, and then there were two other ones that said you have 11 days to do these. Now, are those,
Yes, those you would have to do as well. If it's been assigned to you, you would need to do it as well.
but not before the first meeting?
Not before the first meeting, but you, yeah, but as long as you do one.
Oh, yeah.
And follow, he's numbering, so they are already in the 6 months.
So you can electronically notify everyone? Or do you,
Sorry,
you get electronically notified that you did?
yeah, I'll get electronically notified. Hey there,
Hi, how are you?
Natalie. Nice to meet you.
We have to sit in alphabetical order.
Just for today.
Oh, it's out.
Okay, well now we're going for.
I'm gonna close the door here so we can hear a little bit better.
What a glare. And if you feel shaky, it's because there's
Wait.
a mark, it's not your thing.
Nugent.
Oh, did you forward up the shaky?
Yeah, about
Okay.
shaking, it's a little startling. Feel that.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas mine, it's like everything starts to shake. So you think it's starting to break, but it's not. It's just the part.
It's like living
Unless it is.
next to the train tracks or something.
Yeah. All right. Well, welcome everyone to the first Measure GS Oversight Committee. Until a board and a vice chair, or until a chair and a vice chair is elected, I'll be running the meeting. And then once the board, or the chair and the vice chair is elected, the chair at that point wants to run the meeting, they're welcome to. So the first order, we'll do a call to order. And I'll also just say, Tom is recording the meeting, so make sure you're projecting out, just knowing the acoustics the best you can. We're also taking notes as well. So we'll first start with the call to order.
Do you know whether the council is going to schedule to appoint the other 5 people anytime soon?
I don't know, it depends on the city clerk's office, they usually gather the applications and then they consolidate and then they go to council. So that happened recently, it may happen again,
They're going to be doing another one.
yeah.
So if, when that time comes, we'll let this committee know, so that we can help get the word out. Okay, so the call to order, do you want to do it? Or-
Sure.
Okay.
This is my first time, bear with me. Thanks so much.
Oh, roll call, excuse me.
Yes. So we have Commissioner Amy Anderson.
Here.
I'm sorry, committee member Amy Anderson. Committee member Renee Buchanan.
Here.
Committee member Amijan Jeevan Prakash. Here. Committee member Wayne Kelley. Here. Committee member Michael Stoll. Here. Committee member Bruce Costa.
Here.
This is agenda items, and there's special agenda items, and consent calendar. We haven't received any tickets, as there's no one from the public here yet. So we'll move on to the special agenda items. First is the swearing of the Measure GS committee members. So in front of you, you'll see two printouts. Those are your affidavits for swearing in. So if you can sign both copies on that, and then I will give you one copy back for your copy, and then I'll keep the other to provide to the clerk's office. You have to say those, right? Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You for the day.
End of the day, yeah. Right, well, next on the agenda is the introduction of the Measure GS Oversight Committee members. So we want to introduce ourselves, saying name, guess what committee, if you've had other previous commission or board experience with the city, just a little bit about yourself as well. It might be helpful to introduce staff as well, so I can also start on the staff side, and then we can just go around the table. So my name is Natalie Valinich. I'm the housing manager for the housing division here in Housing and Human Services. I've been with the city about 8 years. I'm newish to the role. I've been in the housing manager for just about a year. Previously, I was a senior development analyst for predominantly housing, with a short stint in economic development during the COVID years. But I'm very excited to have this committee get started and get you guys input. I'll pass it over to Tom.
Hi, I'm Thomas Philbin. This is my first job in the city of Santa Monica. I'm new as of 4 weeks ago, so this is my 4th week. Bear with me. I'm happy to be here. I've previously been an executive assistant to a private investor for the last 8 years. Previous to that, I worked in global advertising at a large firm in Playa Vista. Lived in the Ocean Park neighborhood for 20 years. Santa Monica resident for a long while. I'm excited to work here and work on some good, strong work topics. So, thank you.
Susan Kelley, Assistant City Attorney. I've been with the city for almost 14 years. Prior to that, I was Deputy City Attorney in San Diego for 16 years. I also worked for outside law firms in mainly redevelopment and finance. I've had experience with housing, finance, public works, planning. Hopefully I can get helpful.
Amy Anderson. I am my profession is as a affordable housing developer. I've been in affordable housing development for decades. Spent a little bit of time in housing policy work. Worked for Mayor Eric Garcetti, and then did a little bit of philanthropy, corporate philanthropy for Wells Fargo, but all focused on housing production strategies. And I served on the planning commission for maybe 6 or 7 years.
I'm Renee Buchanan. I previously served on the Housing Commission here in Santa Monica for 10 years.
just recently moved to Santa Monica back in September 2024 from the San Francisco Bay Area, where I worked at a law firm where part of my practice was representing California public agencies, so I worked a lot with a lot of city council members, committees, and city attorneys as well. So hopefully able to bring that experience to city as well. But overall, just excited to be part of the Santa Monica community and love living here so far. And excited to have help, you know, with critical needs that we need as well.
Hello, my name is Wade Kelley. I am homeless. Stay with your friends, but I'm homeless. I peacefully protest and advocate for the homeless on the 3rd Street Promenade, where I've been doing that for 10 years. And before that, I was in showbiz all around the country and different odd jobs. I've always wanted to live as a starving artist, a performing artist, and I never cared much about money, and I think poor people should be able to survive in this country and live. So my address is the people concerned, although even though I had received mail there during the pandemic, I moved my address to there and during the pandemic, and then later to the second, step up on second. And I was told about a month ago that I needed to move my address because I didn't have service. I wasn't using any of the services there at Step Up on Second. I filed for a caseworker there a few years ago. They have no record. They have no record of it now. I stopped by to see if I had mail. I went to the Civic Center outreach, homeless outreach that we had on May 14th over here in the Civic Center parking lot, and I went from table to table to see what the people, I'm sorry, they didn't know one table to the next what they were doing. It was, anyway, I signed up with a caseworker that day to make sure I'm signed up, because I've done it before and I don't show up anywhere. And I signed up that day, and I stopped by People Concerned today, and they said, well, we don't have you listed here. Maybe it's in the email. Maybe somebody's emailed it, and we have, but that's the receptionist who's not here today. So we don't have any record of you. I said, oh, another day and make sure. And I called that Sarai Thomas, the caseworker, and emailed her. I haven't heard back. So we can see, I ran for Santa Monica City Council this past year. I spent zero money on the campaign, and I did not win. But I do think that we need to do a better job here in Santa Monica, as I've been telling people for years now. We need to do a better job of being part of the solution. Santa Monica, since 1970, the population here has grown by about 2,000, while the rest of California grew by about 20 million. And Santa Monica is right next to our public beaches and made quite a nice profit off of being here. And we need to be part of the solution instead of trying to criminalize homelessness. I look forward to seeing the programs that are in place and how we can help be part of the solution to this housing crisis, this homelessness crisis, and not part of the problem, not continue to be part of the problem.
I'm Michael Soloff. Professionally, I'm a lawyer. My pro bono practice has been with Section 8 recipients and tenants' rights principally, although some racial justice work as well. I got woken up to be involved in Santa Monica about 12 years ago, and it appeared to me the city was not properly implementing its inclusionary housing rules. I then was appointed to the Housing Commission, where I served for over 7 years. Renee was there the whole time that I was there. So that's where I got my education in affordable housing and in rent subsidy programs and the like, local ones. I am a principal author of Measure GS. I'm one of the 3 official proponents of Measure GS. I, together with my wife, the funders of Measure GS, and I, in my individual capacity as a proponent, together with the city, successfully defended Measure GS against the California Business Roundtable when they tried to say it was unconstitutional. And I look forward to working with all of you who have all sorts of important different experiences to see if we can be a commission to bring some additional new ideas about how to spend the resources we have that we're creating in the most effective way to address the issues you're talking about, and we're generally creating a place for lower income people in the city of Santa Monica and to keep the folks that we already have here in house.
So I'm Bruce Wessel. I'm also a lawyer by profession. I moved to Santa Monica in 1991 when my son Jacob was born, so I've been here as long as he is old, and I think that's 33 or 34. And my son Jacob works at LA Metro, and his girlfriend works at Community of Friends and does housing work. So they will ask me to report on the meeting when we're done. I became obsessed with all of this when GS passed, and I was wondering what was happening, and I tried to find out. And I've monitored all this stuff on ULA, and I've looked at the Citizens Oversight Committee that they have for ULA and the dashboard that the city has. So I feel like I know more about ULA, how much money there is and how much was spent, than I really know about GS. And I hope we can catch up with LA and go past them in terms of what we get to do here. I currently am representing, with a bunch of other people in public council, the tenant in an apartment building called Yale Terrace in Chinatown. It was built with city funds in around 2007 or 8. And there were recorded covenants that require limits on the rent. And the landlord charged people more than those. And we went to court and we got the judge to reduce the rents to what they've been before and freeze them during the pendency of the case. So I'm learning a lot about landlords, the things they do that can be disturbing. But I also know from looking at the ULA stuff that 25% of the people that applied for assistance for tenants for ULA were landlords, looking out for their tenants and trying to get money for their tenants. So I think the landlords are an important part of making GS work the way they're important part of making ULA.
Well, thank you everyone for the introductions. We're looking forward to working with all of you. As I mentioned, the clerk's office is also going to be doing another round of applications. So when that does happen, I'll notify you all so we can also hopefully have a full committee moving forward. So next is the committee chair and the vice chair election. Susan, you have some thoughts?
Sure. So, I mean, there are various ways of doing this. You can volunteer, and then you can vote. One can nominate another, and then you vote. Unfortunately, because there's 11 and you need a quorum of 6, you need all 6 votes, unanimous votes. So perhaps we could start with the president, to be the chair, and then we go to the vice chair, if that's what we'd like to do.
So I just wonder if that's why I asked, if they're going to appoint the other 5 sometime soon, it feels like they should have some role in this too. And so I don't know if we could not do it until we have a full 11, or whether we do it temporarily until we have a full 11.
Interim chairman?
It depends. I mean, if you would like to do that, I would think, and then you'd like to have it in July.
That would be then a 1 year.
Yeah.
It's also unclear when that appointment would happen, because the clerk's office still needs to advertise it. I believe.
Yeah, it's helpful to have a chair only because the chair usually coordinates with staff on the agenda. So it gives them, one person to talk to versus mean, obviously, if we don't have 6 votes, we don't have 6 votes, and there is no chair.
I nominate Mike Soloff.
I'll second that.
With the proviso that we should, if we can do it, so it's when the other 5 people join us, that we can have them weigh in on this.
So then I'm hearing for voting, that might be an adoption we have to do with bylaws, Susan?
Yeah, I was just looking for one.
Because the bylaws are term.
I actually think the bylaws said that it will change in January. That's
Yeah.
the election is.
Yeah.
So it's not a year.
Believe it or not, it's tough to get people on these larger committees, when they're elected. And.
Well, we also have specific
Yes,
requirements.
we have
so-
very specific requirements,
So it's just between now and January, and then we can, so that's fine.
Yeah.
That's not that many meetings.
Do you have specific requirements? How did I get on this? I mean, what?
You actually-
specific- Oh, demographics, different age groups?
Different
and-
background.
There's homeless, there's mental,
Right.
physical challenges,
Oh.
minor children, senior, locally funded.
So I'm the senior and homeless person. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Usually the clerk designates what the qualification is, but I don't think they did this.
No, we would.
But they did.
It's on the website.
Yeah.
All right.
So it'd be
So-
4 out of the 11 people.
So there is a nomination and a second for Michael Soloff to serve the chair until January. Should we vote on that?
Let's vote.
All right, so let's start. Committee member Anderson?
Aye.
Committee member Buchanan? Committee member Java Karstosh? All right, can you say it again?
Jiva Prakash.
Okay. Thank you. Apologies. Committee member Kelley,
Aye.
committee member Soloff,
Yes.
committee member Wessel.
Yes.
All right, so unanimously, we have committee member Michael Soloff as the chair. Congratulations.
Thank you. Anybody? Somebody want to be the vice chair?
I nominate Amy.
Happy to serve, yeah.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so then, again, unanimously, so we're voting on committee member Anderson serving as the vice chair. So committee member Anderson,
Aye.
committee member Buchanan, committee member Jarva Parsha. Is that
That's Jiva Prakash.
Jiva Prakash.
Jiva Prakash.
Jiva Prakash. Apologies. Committee member Kelley,
Yes.
committee member Soloff,
Yes.
committee member Wessel.
Yes.
All right, congratulations, committee member.
And, while the bylaws, we haven't adopted, we will.
Yes.
They actually say that you can consult with the chair and or the vice chair for agenda. I would ask that you consult with both of us about the agenda.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then Chair Soloff, would you like to continue running the meeting, or would you like to proceed with the meeting?
I think until we get to the work plan, I'll take over that.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so then the next item is the determination of terms for the committee members. When council appointed each of you, all of you were appointed. However, in reading the ballot measure, we need 3 volunteers to serve the initial 2-year term. So committee member Kelley and committee member Buchanan, you both will be on a 2-year initial term. But we then need 3 volunteers from the remaining committee members to volunteer for an initial 2-year term. Or 1 person who's willing to be on the 4-year term.
After the initial 2-year term.
I'm happy to volunteer to do 2.
follow your numbers.
Okay. Sorry.
Do you need 3 volunteers?
We need 3 volunteers to serve for 2 years, for initial 2-year term, and then they can reapply and serve for 4 years after that.
So let me ask you a question about that.
You looking at the ballot measure?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess that's right, and people were pointing later that it's an interesting question. It does say 2 of the lower income household members, 3 of the other members shall be appointed to an additional 2-year term. Could just as easily be the other 5 people, as opposed to the people here, but.
Well, I guess,
But if this is how the city wants to do it, that's fine, so. All
So
we need is
I'm
one
on-
other, either Renee or Bruce, you need to.
You're saying I automatically signed up?
Oh, you already are, okay, sorry.
I'm automatically signed up for how long?
for a 2-year initial term,
2
and then
years.
you can reapply for
Okay.
4 year.
So do we already have 3 people?
So this is
And we
where.
need 5 total.
We need
after
5
6.
total for a 2 initial term. And then 1 remaining person
Oh,
for
so you're
4
saying because
years.
you need 5 and there are only 6 of us.
Correct.
I'm happy to do it, but it's another reason why having 11 would help.
Yes. It's like alternative, it's like, I think that's what we had said, we needed the 2 years first.
Yeah, it's probably easier if you just vote, volunteer for a 4-year term and the rest will be 2 years.
I think the way it's worked out is Commissioner Chief Prakash,
Have to be 2 years.
no,
No,
it's 4 years.
it's 4 years.
And the rest, the other 5 of us
Oh,
said
right.
we're willing to
Yes.
be 2 years.
Okay, are you okay serving for a 4-year term?
Or would you rather be a 2-year term? That's something else.
I'm fine with 4-year term unless someone else would like.
Okay.
I would anticipate we're all going to be reappointed, and if not, but, I'm not too worried about it. Okay.
Well, for
So
those
do
that
we need to vote on
volunteer,
that?
we should probably vote on that, yes. So, to vote on that, we have, committee member Wessel, chair Soloff, and vice chair Anderson, volunteering for a 2-year term. We will go ahead and vote on that. So, committee member, or, excuse me, vice chair Anderson? Oh, sorry, yes, oh, yeah, sorry, we do need a motion, I'm sorry. I'm also.
I'll make a
I'll move
motion.
what you just said.
Okay.
Whatever you say.
Okay, and then a second. Okay. All right, so then, Vice Chair Anderson, Committee Member Buchanan,
Yes.
Committee Member Juba Prakash, I'm so sorry.
Physically on there.
Prakash.
Yeah.
Okay, Juba Prakash. Committee Member Kelley,
Yes.
Chair Soloff,
Yes.
Committee Member Wessel.
Yes.
All right, thank you, everyone. All right, then our next order of business is determining our regular scheduled meeting time and our location. So tonight is a special meeting until we have a regular meeting set. So based off of what all 6 of you had provided initially, it appears the first Monday of the month works best for everyone. Alternatively, Monday and Wednesdays seem to work best. However, this location here, the SMI room, is available only the first Monday of the month, and that was the only one.
That was the only one.
And then the council chambers also is fairly booked out every evening. So we would also need to look at another location, which could either be the main library or Virginia Avenue Park.
So maybe the simple question was, does anybody have a problem being the first Monday of the month?
Seems good.
Sounds good.
And just,
The time would be 6 o'clock.
that was gonna be my next question, does 6 PM work for everyone?
Yes.
Okay.
And And then we would start that in August,
That would be then, the next question is, so the ballot measure says a minimum of 6 times a year per meeting. So the question is, do we stick to that of meeting bi-monthly? Or do we want to meet more frequently? I will just say right now, because there's 6 of you, and that's quorum, in order to meet, we need to have all 6 until we have a full committee.
So I think the point was that we don't necessarily have to meet every month, but it was not meant to restrict that we could meet more. It really depended on what we're trying to accomplish, but we can also call special meetings if we think we need to be more frequent than every other month. So we could schedule a regular meeting every 2 months, but if, based on our discussion, work plan is actually appropriate meeting the next month, we can do it that way. Does that make sense to everybody? Does anybody feel we need to meet more frequently than that? I mean, as a regular meeting, as opposed to setting special meetings?
Well, I think until the housing crisis is ended, once a month would probably be good. I don't know. I mean, I'd like to see a little urgency on, and I don't know the boundaries of what we are able to do in this.
Well, so this is just setting what the automatic meetings would be.
Okay.
And then we can set, if we believe that there's something that we want to accomplish, that in between those times, we can set a special meeting to do that. So, or we could say we're going to just meet every month, we could do that. The measure only requires that, but we would need to have something to do. Obviously, it's a little difficult doing this before we even talk about, as a group, what we're hoping to accomplish this year.
I mean, I guess that would be the other way to do it, is to say that we have monthly meetings and then kind of see what our agendas are shaping up.
You can cancel them, yes.
Then it sounds like the desire I'm hearing is that we set it for monthly, and then if it turns out either, and initially it may very well make sense because we haven't done anything, this has been out there for 2+ years already. And we can do it, or we can amend the bylaws and decide on it.
And while we only have 6, if somebody can't show up, we have to cancel it anyway, right?
Yeah, but so people really are gonna need to be committed that was, we gotta keep that first Monday of every month
Yeah.
open and be here, because.
So I can't do, I can start that in August, but I can't do July, because I'm not gonna be here that Monday.
Oh, I guess that's the Monday after the 4th, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are there other days?
No, July's not a good month.
July's the least.
But
Okay, well,
can we start it as of,
So that one's canceled.
can we start it as of the 4th? Of August 4th?
How would that look in the last, or would we just cancel?
Another possibility is we could have a special, when are you leaving? Because this meeting, we're not gonna accomplish a whole lot substantively, so we could hold a, or if the town's not gonna.
It may be easier to just adopt the monthly meetings and then cancel the first one in July.
Yeah.
That way the bylaws can just say monthly.
No, I understand that for the bylaws, it also means that
I can't,
we're
so
talking
I'm-
7 weeks before we start doing it, so.
Well, I'd like, when we get, I mean, we could, let's do what you suggested. Let's do monthly meetings, and I'll tell you, I can't make that July meeting, but I can make everything thereafter.
We need a motion.
We make a motion, monthly meetings.
Is there a second?
Voice vote.
Huh?
The voice vote.
Oh, okay, voice vote. You can do that?
Say aye.
Oh.
Aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none.
Hearing none.
Alright, so then, okay, Brown Act training, just as a reminder, You should have received something in the clerk's email. If you have not, let me know. But then also, there'll be boards, commissions, and committee training by the clerk's office in August, at least to be determined. Once that's available, information's available, I will be sending it out to all the committee members.
So the most important thing about the Brown Act is that 6 people don't discuss anything without it being formalized as a meeting. So whether it's serial emails or oral contacts, 6 of you cannot discuss. Sometimes there are, they call Brown Act subcommittees where you will agree to discuss amongst yourselves as long as you're not a quorum. That doesn't violate the Brown Act. The rest of it is more about noticing.
So right now, we only have 6 members, is that we're limited to 2, talking to 2 other people present, or we still?
Well, technically you can talk to 5.
Could.
Yeah, it's weird because you don't have 11, and so it seems strange, but a quorum is 6. So, but you
So me not being available in July could work out well.
But anyway, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
because
And
that
then-
seems strange.
It does seem
Because
strange.
effectively, talk to 5, 6 in the car.
Yeah, but technically it's less than a quorum. But I do think that it would be worthwhile for you to attend the Brown Act training when the clerk gives it, because they go into a lot more detail.
Does that make
And that's
sense
in
to
August.
everybody who may not have dealt with the Brown Act before?
That's in August.
Yes, that's my understanding. You will be given by the clerk in August.
And is there a rule
Yeah,
about,
that makes sense. I understand what you're saying. You can use 5 when there are only 6 of us, and that's not too many, but that's the way it works, but because it's supposed to be 11.
is there something about communicating using the city email or communicating with other members of the committee?
You should all have gotten city emails.
Yes. And so when you're working on official city business, communicating with staff or amongst each other, you should be using your city email, but do not email more than 5 members, because otherwise that would be in violation of the Brown Act. And then also, just know that your city email is subject to the Public Records Act, and so that, just be mindful of that as well. Other questions?
So we're not limited, if we as committee members want to make a public comment for our agenda, we can do that individually.
Here at committee meeting or at council?
No, at the committee meeting. You're saying we can't communicate with the whole committee.
Oh,
Does that violate
If
some?
it's noticed, if it's a notice meeting, you can speak with whoever you want.
Right, but let's say in a week before a notice meeting, I come up with an idea, I want to write something on one piece of paper to the committee. I can't do that because that violates the Brown Act. I have to wait till we get together.
Yeah, although again, what people do is they have what they call their little Brown Act subcommittee, so they make sure that they have support amongst themselves as long as it's not a quorum, and then they introduce it at the meeting, which never happens. The key is not to have a conversation, even if it's serial, like we talked about, and so on, so that there's a quorum, serial communications, or using Natalie, for example, in order to, she would be like a hub and spoke. There's various terms for it, but the bottom line is that there shouldn't be 6 of you communicating without noticing it as Brown Act. It's really about the notice.
And can Natalie write to all of us at the same time?
Yes, so what I've been doing is I've been BCCing you all, so if you accidentally reply all, you don't communicate with each other. And something some of the other committees or commissions have done is they've created subcommittees if there is like a specific item on the work plan that they want to address that is less than the Brown Act amount.
So if I am live streaming, peacefully protesting on the promenade, I can talk about anything unless it's something that I'm told specifically not to talk about. in closed session or something. And if somebody commented on it, I mean, that's up to, that's up to them, right?
As long as you don't represent that you're speaking on behalf of the committee, when the committee is not authorized, you can take a position.
Okay. So all five of you can't stop by while I'm live streaming. and talk about it. Okay.
Not about something that will become here before this.
Exactly.
If you want to talk about coffee, you're welcome to talk about coffee. But if it's something relating specifically with this committee,
Housing the homeless, then talk.
yeah.
So one thing that, at least my recollection of this is a position we took at the Housing Commission, I think it was committee member Wessel's point, is if it's a noticed agenda item and the person presenting on it is a member of the commission, committee, if what they've written up is the report, which is made public to everybody, that was, at least when we were on the Housing Commission, we did that from time to time, and that was considered okay because it was disclosed to the public. Nobody's talking back to you about it or whatever. So that might relate to the scenario you're talking about.
Yeah.
And we're also happy, there's questions that come up about the Brown Act or anything, or you're not sure about something, you can also just reach out. We're able to address it and figure it out real time for you all too. Any other questions about the Brown Act? So, I'm gonna give just a brief overview on yes, hopefully this still works. Sorry, it turned off.
It's on.
Oh, it's on? Okay. You guys,
Maybe we should turn off some lights.
is it up here? Okay. Oh, okay. Does that make it a little bit better?
Is that good?
Good.
Okay. Can you guys hear me? Okay, alright.
Yep.
If you can't, just let me know. Okay, so Measure GS is what brings us all here tonight. So it was approved by the Santa Monica voters in 2022. The transfer tax on property sales or transfers that are over $8 million. And these new revenues are dedicated to help fund homelessness prevention, affordable housing, and public educational programs. And it creates two funds. The first is it creates the new homelessness prevention and affordable housing fund, referred to as the HAAH fund. And then also it creates a new school fund. This committee has oversight over the homelessness prevention and affordable housing fund. And so the new revenues, the school fund receives the first $10 million annually of the received funds. And then the homelessness prevention and affordable housing fund receives the next $40 million of the received fund. And then any funds over that $50 million in a year is split 20% towards the school fund and 80% towards the homelessness prevention and affordable housing fund. So this committee, the Measure GS Oversight, Resident Oversight Committee, makes recommendations to City Council for the guidelines that govern this fund, again, the homelessness prevention and affordable housing fund, as well as also the allocation of annual funding amongst the programs. As we already talked about, there's two committee members, there's committee members, and there's 11 folks. And then after that initial term, the appointments and reappointments are all 4-year terms. So in Measure GS, there was specific funding parameters, which is similar to ULA, but also different in that regards. I've bolded the key things, but no more than 6% of the city's fund, which is the HPAH fund, annually can be used for admin, which includes compliance, implementation, other administration. No less than 30%, but no more than 50% shall be used to provide ongoing and emergency income assistance with priority given to households with seniors, minority children, or minor children, persons facing physical or mental challenges. They have priority with those programs funded. And then no less than 50% shall be used to acquire and rehab existing rental properties and turning into deed restricted or creating new deed restricted affordable housing for targeted income households. Then all of the remaining funding can be used, may be used for the tenant protection programs and services. This could include compliance enforcement, legal services, and loans and grants to landlords or other unit improvements, or it could be a reserve fund for future funding of programs. The key thing is these funds should be addition to, not a replacement of any funds the city otherwise would have used. So just to highlight what the housing division has as existing programs outside of these funds. We have our voucher programs through the Housing Authority. We have 6 voucher programs that are federally funded through HUD. And we also have our tenant-based rental assistance program, which is funded from our Home Investment Partnership Program, also just known as HOME. And those provide rental assistance to roughly about 1,800 households within the city. We also have the Preserve Our Diversity Program, also known as POD. It was recently expanded to $3 million annually. Previously it was $2 million. It's been increased to $3 million. That's funded from Measure GSH funds. And that is for seniors. It's a basic income program for seniors in rent-controlled properties who've been living in their rent-controlled property for 20 years. It looks at the after-rent income and a basic income calculation to provide cash rental assistance on a monthly basis. We also operate our city-administered waitlist for all affordable and inclusion, which includes inclusionary units. That's known as our below-market housing waitlist. And then a strategy that has been identified in our housing element that we're executing is the development of city-owned sites. So 2 sites are currently in the pre-development and seeking financing right now. We have 3 other sites, 2 of which will be released in a notice of availability on June 30th. And then additionally, we have housing trust funds from other sources that are invested towards affordable housing, both on our city-owned sites, and then we have some other loans throughout the city as well. And then we do preservation of affordable housing. Historically, we had a rehabilitation program that was funded with community development block grants. And we also used housing trust funds as well. And then we also oversee the city's inclusionary program, ensuring that inclusionary units are utilized for those households it was intended for. So I first just want to share some considerations for this committee as you're going on your journey together. First, impacts for our voucher and rental assistance programs. Measure GS could be a great resource for those programs, depending on if there are impacts for those. Potential impacts that we've been looking at are what's called mixed status households. So those are households where there may be some undocumented household member, and so historically HUD has allowed those to be prorated based off of those that are residents that are documented and those that are undocumented. We have a small handful of households that could be impacted by that. We've also been hearing from HUD. There was a New York Times editorial or opinion piece from some of the secretaries, that included the HUD secretary and others, about potential workplace or work mandates, either work or voluntary, so that would be another potential impact. And then just others that might come up. So just wanted to highlight that as a potential consideration. Also, the development of the new renter protection programs and the flexible financial assistance programs. I'll speak to those later. They were approved by City Council with Measure GS funds to be utilized for that. Right now, staff is working on researching the implementation of that program, but if there are committee members, either through a subcommittee or this group collectively, that would like to be part of assisting in the research of the implementation of that program, that would be a great asset. And then lastly is just the implementation of the city's homelessness strategic plan, which was also adopted in March 2025. There's strategies that have been identified in that as well. So the renter protection programs and the flexible financial assistance, I'll speak high level on it. If you have additional questions, we can speak more to that either this meeting or a future meeting, but it was adopted by City Council as a priority and as a program on March 11th, 2025 as part of the homeless strategic plan. Includes the expansion of the Right to Counsel program and also the creation of a new flexible finance assistance program. So as part of that, council uses initial fundings, dedicates $7 million in Measure GS funds, and $1 million we received from the state's Housing and Community Development Pro Housing Incentive Program grant program. That was one time that we are using for part of that flexible financial assistance program. So this $7 million commitment from the Measure GS funds is utilizing the first year's allocation towards the income assistance and tenancy protection services, with roughly $1 million remaining in that first year of allocation. We're right now in our third year of allocation. So staff is planning to phase in these programs and scale them up over the course of the next 5 years based off of the available resources and also the available demand. So we are projecting, staff is projecting this will take 12 to 18 months to implement, and we're right now further researching the flexible financial assistance programs as well. And then lastly is the homelessness strategic plan. So that was also adopted on March 11th, and as part of that, there was a creation of a new homelessness prevention and intervention, or HPI division. And annually, there'll be $497,000 from Measure GS directed towards new staffing costs. That includes a new homelessness prevention and intervention manager, which is currently under recruitment, a new senior HPI, or homelessness prevention and intervention analyst, as well as a new senior housing specialist that will act as a housing navigator for the housing division for our voucher participants and connecting from application all the way through. So with that is my short presentation.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, do you know how much money's sitting in the fund at the present?
Yes.
When I looked at the budget, there was a $37 million number that I couldn't figure out. When I did a Public Records Act request, I could figure out how much came in. Sometimes I get confused about the 10 million to the schools, which I think would have been paid twice since we started the Measure GS tax.
My apologies, it is not showing up, we do have it.
In my request, they said that they were gonna pay the $10 million, whatever deal they did with the schools, they were gonna pay it every May.
There we go. You guys can see that, right? Okay, so this is we're right now in the middle of our third allocation year. So this includes the first $10 million that's been spent.
Just a question, is this March to February? Is that what the years are?
It is March to February, correct. So you'll notice it says Measure GS year. Measure GS runs from March to February. But then in the budgets, our county, city budgets, it is by fiscal year.
So that total column is after the 10 goes to the school fund?
Correct.
They take that off the top?
Yes. And then what we've done is we have done, oh, you guys can't see my mouse. Apologies. So this is the total fund. This is then what minimum of 50% is. Then 30, the admin, and then the remainder. So what city council adopted for the flexible financing was utilizing these two figures right here.
So that 7 million from those two categories has been allocated.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and then there's roughly $1 million left in that. And then there's been a small portion of the admin has been utilized moving forward for the HPI division.
So these numbers are after the school fund.
Correct.
But otherwise, those funds are available.
Yes.
Yeah.
But again, yes, they are.
So how much of it has been used?
So city council has dedicated the first year to the flexible financial and the
Used doesn't mean it's been spent.
it's
means
been dedicated.
Dedicated in March, so they haven't spent.
It hasn't been spent. We have the next 5 years to utilize it. So that is where right now staff has been further researching program design to start implementing that program.
And can you go back to the other page? Is that public anywhere, or are we the first people to see it?
I believe this breakdown,
No, just the left column of how much money came in after paying schools.
I think this first two numbers are public.
Because that, when you look at this ULA dashboard, it shows every month how much came in.
Yeah,
So the June number is what months? Starting in March?
March,
April,
Sorry.
May, June?
February, no, it's March to February, so it's March to June. March 2025.
2025 to
It's
26.
3 months.
March, April, May, so it's not June. So the first 3 months, it's $1 million. And it's,
Correct, after the 10 million payment,
okay, so it was 11 minus the 10.
correct.
So it doesn't include June? It says.
We're in June right now, because it's says June 9th.
Just says through July.
So that means this is a good year. So far, this has been a good year.
It depends on the number of sales.
Can I? Was GS advisory when it was approved, did it like only need 50%?
It only needed 50%, but that's because it was an initiative.
Ah, yeah, okay, great.
It is not advisory. As we've seen what the city council does with advisories, and when it comes to affordable housing, they take the money away and don't spend it on them.
We have a question time? Are you
Yeah.
continuing your presentation, or?
No, that was the conclusion of it.
Are we going to be looking into any of the programs where the money is going already, the services, homeless services, or? I'm
So
really
when we
interested.
get to item 9 on our agenda, it's our work plan for the year, so that's when we're gonna talk among ourselves about what it is we want to accomplish, things like the programs we want us to look at, things like that, how we have time for that discussion.
Wonderful.
But to
Thank you.
date, Measure GS has only been dedicated or committed to the renters protection and the flexible finance programs and these 3 positions in the
Mhm.
HBI division.
Does the HBI division administer that flexible plan?
So that's gonna be split between, still deciding where the actual home is, but it's gonna be held within the Housing and Human Services, but Housing Division and Human Services and HBI Division are all working collaboratively to implement the program.
Okay. I need to think about how that connects to the spending of Measure GS.
So just back, I know we've covered this, but the way they do it is they run the year from March is the first month of the year, and all the money that comes in at the beginning of the year goes to the schools. And when the 10 million has been met, the minimum 10 million, then it goes into the housing fund thereafter.
Yes, so the first 10 million in that fiscal year goes to the schools. Thereafter, the next 40 million goes to the housing or homelessness prevention and affordable housing fund. And then thereafter, if there is an excess of 50 million, it's split between the school and the city.
The 80/20.
80-20, correct?
And do you know when, so now you're telling us, because you said there's $1 million that went into the homeless and housing fund in this year, the March, that means I know that they've got 10 million in March, April, May. Do you know when they hit the 10 million last year?
I don't right now, no.
But whenever it was, they only had 10 million more, because your slide showed 10 million.
Correct.
So for the year, it was 20 million. And the first year was
Yes.
28, the second year was 20.
Correct. So again, it's all goes back to how many property sales and property transfers.
And do you have any sense, either actual or anecdotal, that have the fires impacted the number of transactions over 8 million?
I don't have any anecdotal, the fires definitely impacted the rental market. We've been experiencing that in terms of our voucher holders and others finding rental housing. I can't speak to the sales.
Anecdotally, brokers send us things claiming that there's been actually a fair number of sales above $8 million in single family homes, which I think are tied to the fires.
Which made me explain why the 10 million came so quickly this year compared to last year, I assume.
It may. It's like, again, it's anecdotal. It also depends on a whole host of other things going on.
And just on the math, so your numbers come up to 29, And then you've said 7 has been allocated by the councils. So that means 22 is just sitting there unspoken for at the moment.
Correct, we were waiting for, there's a lawsuit that Chair Solomon
Okay.
mentioned, but then we're also waiting to see if it was consistent or if there was, dips or not.
If you're interested in the history, or anybody is, there was a report that was prepared by HRNA to City Council before this was placed on the ballot that showed the prior 10 years, and it's very volatile. So this is a funding source that varies tremendously because there are only a few very large sales drive. So one can expect that there's going to continue to be a lot of viability. That's one reason why there was discussion in the measure about possibly creating a reserve fund so you can smooth out your expenditures to the land fund.
Yeah, in the year 1 numbers that I got from the city, the lowest price transfer was 9.7, and then the highest one was 165 million. So when there's a big building that sells, that was like a third of the money for them. And in the HRNA report, it was, I wouldn't say distorted, but there was one year, it was a humongous year, and I think it was like the water garden sold or something. So then you have this huge influx of money, and that may be a once in a lifetime event. But it's good that feels like we're ahead of schedule this year compared to last year.
Is there water in here?
There's a faucet, I just got the tap water.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? And again, staff's more than welcome to do presentations on various programs or other questions that may come up.
Have we shared this with us?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any way we can get that from?
Yes, I'll share it. Okay, and then the next item is the adoption of the bylaws, which were attached, and there's also now as well. So now we have a regular meeting date, we can fill in the highlighted sections for the first Monday of the month at 6 p.m. here at SMI training room, monthly. Are there any questions or comments or questions?
I guess I'm just curious, it's just the
template.
standard,
It's a template, a couple years ago, the city clerk, requested that council standardize the bylaws, and so this is the standard template. The committees, some of them have minor deviations, but by and large, it's pretty much this form.
And is the attendance have a quorum? Does it have to be here in person, or can you do it online?
You have to follow the Brown Act requirements for remote attendance, so.
And for that, you have to, if not just recently, you have to provide the address of where you're having your remote meeting. So if you're having it at home, you have to provide your home address.
There's actually a few ways of doing it. One
Okay.
is, you have to be in a public place, and therefore, post a notice in a public place, it sounds strange, but it's usually in health bodies. That's one way of doing it. The other is, there are exceptions now to the Brown Act as a result of COVID. And I apologize, I don't want to
Okay.
talk about that, but there are ways to attend remotely, but we don't have the two-way communication that you would need for that method. So you have to meet some very strict requirements before you can remote, unless you want to be in a public place.
So we probably won't be able to do that if we need to.
More than likely, probably not. We don't have
you're able to use your laptop to do that, so we should be able to have a Zoom meeting.
But again, there are certain requirements, so if you'd like, I can like, call that out.
Yeah, well, especially since, for whatever reason, there are only 6 of us and everyone has to be at every meeting, to even have a meeting. So if one of us is out of town or in the hospital or something, like there should be a way that they can appear remotely.
Thank you.
We'll put that as a little cheat sheet for you, so.
I say don't zoom into the meeting for months.
In the hospital. In between surgeries.
So it looks like the other thing we have to fill in is how far in advance of the meeting certain things have to happen. Go to page 3. Speaking for myself personally, I think we should try and have things, we should try and have the agenda out a week before the meeting. There's a tendency for it to fall very close, and sometimes that's inevitable, but we should really strive for that to give both ourselves and when anybody in the public ever becomes interested in what we're doing here, the public an opportunity to actually look at the materials and be ready. And I think we're also asked how far in advance of the agenda people want to suggest something to the chair and the vice chair for inclusion in the agenda.
So what, 10 days for that and 7 days, that's the goal?
Does that work?
So we're stuck.
So 7 days, so that would be the Monday before, and then for submittal of the materials would be the Friday or the Thursday before. You can Friday, the Thursday before the agenda, Monday is due.
So a week and a half before.
Yeah, that's good, doing it by days instead of by,
Right.
so Thursday before by 5. And then,
And then the Monday before by 5.
Sure. I think that was
Page 3, right.
that's on page 3.
Monday, agenda, Monday for other members.
Okay, so shall we move, I'll move that we adopt these bylaws with the additions that we talked about, which is our meeting time. The first Monday of the month, at this location at 6 o'clock in the evening. And that, agenda, the normal course will come out like a week before the meeting. And that if any member wants to request something within the jurisdiction of the committee be placed on the agenda, they'll send that to the staff liaison and chair by 5 p.m. on Thursday, which is 10 days before the meeting. So, is there a second to that motion?
second,
Just take a voice vote on that. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, so the only remaining item on the agenda is our work plan for this year. This is an item that should be on every agenda, which will allow us to talk freely about what we want future meetings to cover, et cetera, et cetera. I thought it was just a very initial thing. Unless we feel differently, just each of us can sort of talk about briefly what it is they'd like to see us accomplish as a committee, and then we can talk about what specifically we might do about those things. Happy to go last if others would like to go first, or happy to share with you what I think, whatever you guys prefer.
I
Wanna
guess
start?
maybe go
Commissioner
in order,
Kelley.
and go in order, and.
Good.
I mean, I think, just off the top of my head, feel like affordable housing production is really important, and there are certainly like traditional, ways to supporting that by layering all sorts of other funding sources, but I know Santa Monica has also tried to find ways to maybe support smaller projects where it's like cumbersome to layer in all those other projects. So I think maybe looking at ways to use the GS funds for production that other funding sources that the city has available for production are not doing, if that makes sense. And then I don't think this is necessarily work plan, but I feel like it is really important for us to better understand the existing programs in more detail, for us to think about where there might be gaps, or where we can make improvements to existing programs.
And based on your long experience, do you have a sense of what existing programs exist, or is it blur to you the way this is?
I mean, just from what Natalie just went
Yeah.
through. But it would be, be nice to get some written details behind some of that we could use as a resource, right?
Are we allowed to use people's first names, or are we supposed to?
I think so.
Okay, so Renee, let's go next.
Well, I think the most important, and I may not object enough for that, so you will just tell me I don't. The most important issue for me is just ensuring that these funds are used for what they're intended. They don't get sidetracked, used for other things. That it's money raised for. It's money raised through GS, that what GS says that money should be spent for is what it should be spent on. It should not be borrowed. That's dedicated.
So committee member Jiva Prakash, I don't know your first name, so I
I don't
can't call you that yet, so.
Nugent's my first name.
Nugent? Okay, so.
Yeah, I think kind of pretty similar. I think right now, what's important for me is work plan is getting to understand the programs here. I think it's important that considering how much money is actually in the fund, actually being able to utilize it efficiently, and not just having those allocated to the programs, but making sure we have proper safeguards. People watching others is actually being spent, minimized, because that's the purpose of having allocations. I think that all just comes back to having a better understanding of what's out there. Things like learning about the flexible financial system program, things like that, are useful, but figuring out and discussing how we can, help fund or supplement these national programs that potentially might need money in the future. I think that always comes down to education that will help us set a general plan.
Kelley, I don't know your first name either.
Wait.
Wait, please.
All right, thank you guys for letting me be part of this. I really would like to find out where the programs are right now. I talk a lot about the housing elements, and the city had its zoning rights. I don't know if that's the correct term. It wasn't in compliance with the state's zoning laws in 2022. Remember, and the state took away the right of the city to determine who would get permits for building housing. That's correct. And then they got into compliance after a little while, right?
You're correct that there are people who claim that the builder's remedy applied. There was a lawsuit by the city over that. There was a settlement. And there's one and only one property that the city agreed could go outside of the zoning.
But they put forth a plan, right? And the number that I keep hearing was 4,500 affordable housing units by 2029, from 2022 to 2029. Is that correct? I'd like to find out some of these numbers and see where we are right now. How many of those 4,500 affordable housing units have been built and are still waiting to be built by 2029? And, you know, I'm down there on the promenade talking about the 4th Street in Arizona, the place. They've been talking about building affordable housing over there since 2018, and it is 2025. And now there's pickleball courts in that lot where they tore down parking structure number 3. It's supposed to be 122 or 130 affordable housing units. They've been talking about that since 2018. Is that about the time? And I talked with one of the city council members. He said, it might start, they might break ground by 2028, 2020, you know, and then the business owners along the promenade and around sue the city, so that affordable housing there. Is that correct? I'd like to find out some of these
Not quite.
things.
City parking lot that was designated for affordable housing, and there's a pending lawsuit, which we just won the motion to strike, but they filed 2 complaints, so we have to deal with the second.
Oh, no, that's a different one. Let's talk about one for constructed green. And that one is moving forward.
Yes, that's sequel.
Yeah, that one is moving forward. There's just it's in the coastal zone, it's taking longer due to it being in the coastal zone.
And the environmental impacts, things that go on with all of these. I had an idea. Anyway, I'd like to find out more numbers, exact numbers, so when I'm talking about it on the street, I'm getting it. But when I was running for city council, I was trying to find out. I wanted to go visit the shelters in town. How many shelter beds do we actually have in Santa Monica? I'd like to see them. I'd like to see what, I've heard different stories about the shelters, how terrible they are, how people are threatening to kill them all the time, and how you can't get in. People say they have shelter beds. No, you can't. I can't go tonight and get a shelter bed in Santa Monica. I have to be referred by different programs. I can't get a place to sleep. And that's why I was so hard on the city council when they criminalized sleeping bag, put it back on the law, on the anti-camping law, criminalizing sleeping bags and bedrolls for homeless human beings when they did just after Grants Pass versus Johns finished, right?
I think Santa Monica has 200 and something shelter beds total.
I would love to see
None
that.
of them are emergency, so there are no beds that somebody can just walk in off the street and say, hey, I need a place to sleep tonight.
Mhm.
One of the programs has, at least it did, I don't know about now, it had 10 emergency beds, but even David, the women's shelter, even then, the people had to be referred. It's just that they could be referred and get into a bed that day or the next day. But there are no places in Santa Monica where somebody can just walk in and say, hey, I need a place to stay.
And this new liaison program that it says we will give people the choice of signing up for a 90-day program where they have to go through different things or they can go to jail. I'd like to know more about have they actually started it yet, that liaison program?
I'm not aware of that. What's the other claim counterparts? So I can get more information on that.
and there's so many things I'd like to know so that we can let people know. I'm on the street talking with homeless people all the time. And, you know, people are saying, these homeless people just gotta get a job. They can't afford a place to live even. There are people that work for downtown Santa Monica, Inc. They couldn't afford, they were living on the beach and in parks and homeless, you know, because, and so, anyway, as far as the environmental thing, isn't there a way, wouldn't there be a way to promote environmental RVs, and then you'd be making charging stations, like, we need to make more charging stations supposedly in California if we want to move to electric vehicles, right? And instead of leaving all the poor people behind and saying we can't build housing for poor people because it goes against the environment, we need to figure out how to use programs that can help further the environment with sustainable RVs that are electric or something, and get more program money for things like that. And does that make sense? Do you see what I'm saying? The sustainable units that could be mobile, and that way you build more charging stations around, and you're part of moving us forward and housing poor people and homeless people. And I hope we do talk about ideas to be to promote using some of the 200 acres of airport land to build some affordable housing. You know, if that comes to the city in 2028, for the city not to use some of that land for affordable housing, then. And that's fine. With good leadership, it could be, if you have a good program. I saw some of the graphics of the different, on the survey, the different approaches to that property. But 200 acres of land, if you don't build some affordable housing, when you have so many people in the streets and so many of your first responders and so many of your city workers can't afford to live in your city, that makes for bad democracy. And if it's only business owners and homeowners being part of the democracy while all of the workers can't afford to be part of it, then that, So anyway, I look forward to learning more about these things, and hopefully we can promote some of these things.
Okay, well, obviously, yes, we need a baseline of what's currently going on, a lot of data, I'm hearing that from everybody, I agree with that. I think some of us see more, some of this is available online, but, you know, if we have a presentation, like I think you're referring to the RENA allocation to the city, which is actually something of the order of, what it is, I think 6,200, maybe more than that, affordable housing units in the city. Now, right now, it's costing, even when we're giving people the land, the bids are like $800,000 a unit, so we have to be realistic about what can be created. You know, but if you don't reach for the stars, you can't go as far as you can. But I think we also need some basic presentations on what the economics are of the existing models that's being referred to there, so people can see what the problem is. For me, it's clear that the existing models are never going to get us where we need to go. That's actually why many years ago, Renee and I were on the Housing Commission, originally came up with the idea that we need a local rent subsidy program, because we need to look at those numbers too. We can help a lot more people with the same amount of money, stay housed, at a reasonable thing than spending $1 million a unit to create that. That's not to say we don't need to create more affordable housing units, we do. I'm hoping we can do here, I guess there are two things. What we're mandated to do here is talk about how we spend our money, the money that comes through this. And so we have to keep that lens in mind, that is what we're doing. But in order to know what it should be spent on, you need to understand what the options are, and what we're going to get in response to them. On the affordable housing development side, you know, I'm interested in looking robustly at social housing and what real economics of that. I mean, what is that something where the GS money can juice that in a way and get more units if we have some cross subsidization people talk about it a lot. But I haven't seen anybody really do the economic analysis of what it takes. Somebody, Joe Blank, and some people here may know, starting to do some such analysis precisely about the possibility of putting affordable housing at the airport, below market housing at the airport. But I think that would need to really delve into that and understand what the economics are, and whether that's something that can allow us to get more done with the same amount of resources and work. I know that there are people out there in the world, and I'm suspecting that Amy knows more about this than I do, but there are some people out there that are trying to raise social capital funds, private funds to build affordable housing in ways. Is there some way that we can partner with them, you know, so that we can grow the amount of resources? Because the simple fact of the matter is, if it's just the traditional thing of stacking, you know, the housing, low-income housing tax credits and HSC funding and a couple other things, and then some money from the city and whatever, we're never going to get, well, we're never going to get as far as we want to go, but we're not going to get as close to where we want to go as we'd like to. So that's another possibility. I know City Council tomorrow night is going to be talking about the possibility of changing what we're having our for-profit development projects do, to combine in some way, with offsite in some way to create affordable housing there, to both free up some of those projects, but also maybe to do something here. So on that side of it, I'd like to see us really delve into some alternative models and see what's there. And I will call it, this is less than it's essential. Would it be before I finish? Okay. You know, but I just also want to remind people here that this, politics on my shoulder here, but long before the Department of Government Efficiency, one of the things that's written into the laws, and one of the factors, the only one that's specifically called out that we're required to consider, is cost effectiveness. And so we need to be looking at all these things to see whether we're spending the money in a way that we can justify to the public that we're getting the most bang for the buck. And if we're not, then what alternatives are there? And then on the, you know, on the support side of things, you know, it was mentioned we have this rent subsidy program. The original program was very constrained. We only had a very limited amount of money. Renee will remember this. There were people, when we first came up with this idea, who wanted it to be seniors, because they literally said at the Housing Commission meeting, well, seniors won't live as long, and so we're not committed for as long to pay them money. So that was the initial thing, and the reason that it had to be here a long time was because the way Costa-Hawkins work is that anybody who is still in an apartment that was rented before 1999, they're paying, even in those markets, what effectively is an affordable housing rent, so the amount of money we have to spend to subsidize each of those households so that they can meet their minimum basic budget after paying their rent is lower, therefore we can help more people with a limited amount of money. Now that's been expanded both dollars from the original measure, GS back in 2016, and also City Council meeting the city staff or the city manager working with the city staff, the authority to start loosening those requirements. So where exactly that is now, that one of the things to Renee's point is, it's very clear the point of this measure was not that the money from original GS that was supposed to go to affordable housing would now go somewhere else, because that's not legally bound. Placed with this money, then we're not moving it, this is meant to be in addition to that money, which was, you know, roughly $7 million a year. If we're starting to get, you know, whatever, 10, $20 million a year, we start having a lot more than we've ever had, so before to spend on this. So I think we ought to look at that. I guess I don't, if that's a serious offer, then we can have a subcommittee work with staff and the program that's being done. I think that's something that can be accomplished between meetings. A group of people could do it. I think, you know, I think with people who, we have lawyers who've worked representing tenants and all of that, or organizations that do that, so although that's good, we still on it. Oh, okay. Okay. Just because of conflict of interest issues, they paid one of the people who were applying for money from the city. But anyway, I think that would be good. I don't know whether we would be invited if we had a subcommittee to also participate in the thinking about how you're going to enhance, you know, give greater flexibility off-site to the existing developers in a way that would most improve our overall housing production. Because I'm assuming while the money may not be technically committed, while technically the city council only committed $7 million when it was first, if you read the report, which everybody should get, we should probably send that to everybody, the report from that city council meeting. You know, the intent isn't that it was going to be $7 million over 5 years. It was probably the intent wasn't that we're going to come back to the well and $7 million more every year based on what was in there. So that's something I have to look at, and also what the reporting back is to make sure that at the end of the day we can stand up in public and say, you know, look at this. This isn't a very cost-effective program, or something wasn't, and so we recommend to council that we shift it somewhere else. So that's sort of what I'm hoping is that you know, I can be told I'm wrong about this, but because some of the money can even be for administration or for other things here, to be able to look at some things that may be, you know, more out of the ordinary, to try and drive things that staff, because they're running everything as it's going through, you know, study that and see if there are recommendations to be made to make it more effective. You know, I do, I don't want to sound like a pessimist, but I do think it's also important to be realistic. You know, this money and everything else, we're not going to just from that generate 6,500 low market units in years. That's not real, but we should be trying to see how we can bring all the resources that exist together in the way that most moves the ball forward, and also be monitoring that. And I also like, which I hadn't thought about before, but I've actually looked at that new LA site too, and found that having some transparency around this, much as the city's tried to create a dashboard on the maps, which can show you where that is, you can look at, I think would be a good thing. So anyway, so that's what I'm sort of hoping, and maybe what I'm taking from this is that we ought to try and next meeting have a comprehensive Amy and I can work together to sort of a list of things, and then work with Natalie and you know, what's realistic, to try and level set everybody about what's out there, what we're doing, how it's going to work, what it's going to cost, and all of that, and then go from there on our things. But I think also it would be good, because we had the offer to form a subcommittee tonight, which I think is legitimate under a work plan item, to, you know, actually between the meetings work with staff and understand more about the program that's already, you know, planning to spend a significant portion of the money that isn't required to go to affordable housing development.
Yeah, so it would be great if we could form a subcommittee of the chair and the vice chair, and give you guys some work projects to help make the next meeting as fruitful as possible, so that we're going on the learning curve quickly. exists. So for my first principle is looking at what the voters were told when they voted for this. And the voters were told that 1 out of 5 people in Santa Monica is renters, that they spent over half their money on rent and utilities. And then there was talk about, we'll have this great emergency assistance program that'll pay rent for people so that they won't get evicted. So to me, that money we should have spent that last year. If this is true, if there are really people who are being evicted for non-payment because of an emergency, we have this cash that we can pay the rent for them. And the city of LA did that on the ULA. The first year they paid an average of $7,000 for 4,300 people. So I'm not sure I believe the HUD numbers that there's as big a crisis as was represented in this past, but I'm sure there are people who are being evicted today, and that non-payment of rent is a big reason for it. And we have money that we could spend that would go to the landlord to pay the rent. And I just think that should be the top priority, because that's money, it's not that much money to spend to help people really quickly, because talking about, building things, that's years down the road. So I don't understand when I looked at the ULA website, they did it last year and now they say that's closed. So they spent $30 million last year on this emergency rental assistance. And it looks like they're not doing it this year. I don't understand why that is, but this year they have something called income support, where they're giving tenants who are low income support, and it's seniors and disabled, and that they said they're spending $9 million on for 457 tenants. But so I just think that since a big chunk of the money is supposed to be allocated to help people stay housed, and I just wonder, could we be an eviction-free city for a year? Is there a way of saying that at least eviction shouldn't happen because people, the limit I think in LA is 6 months, but people shouldn't be evicted if they can't pay the rent because of an emergency. It seems easy to spend this money to solve that problem in the short term. And then the issue, this is in the city stuff about right to counsel. If the city has a deal with LAFLA and there's right to counsel for people, sometimes I'd rather people have a check than a lawyer if that can solve the problem. But I'd love to hear from the LAFLA lawyers who are on the ground to tell us what the problems are, when they counsel people on their rights, and obviously it's a dispute between the landlord and the tenant. I think we should be educated at that level. So to make sure that we can do anything to help people stay housed, that we're able to do that. And I'm just curious, I'm happy to be a subcommittee of one, to try and find out more what's going on with ULA and why they had that program in year one. It doesn't seem to exist. To help people with their rent. And as I said before, my numbers might be wrong, but of the money they actually paid out, 14% of the money was requested by landlords, not tenants. So to say to landlords, if you have an issue with a tenant not paying rent because of an emergency, they should know that this money exists, and that maybe the GS funds can be used to pay someone's rent. And maybe we'll waste a little money in year one, be fine-tuned, but it seems to be, if we're sitting on $22 million, and if the statements and what we were told before the election are accurate, there are people, families who are in trouble even as we speak, that we should be able to help with this money or this issue.
Do you want to respond?
Yeah. I think it would be helpful, and I can send it out. The flexible financial assistance programs are exactly what you're talking about. This city administered pretty comprehensive analysis that was part of that I think also the board of this committee that looked at unlawful detainers, what was driving it, that really spoke to the figures that were part of it. come and provide a detailed presentation on that analysis and what was also presented to the council as well at the, I believe we're meeting in August, or in July, so it'll be at the August meeting.
Right, in the March 11th thing, in Heather Everett's report to the city, I think they approved, and they said, all Santa Monica households facing household unaffordability whose incomes do not exceed 80% of AMI have access to a one-time financial assistance not to exceed $5,000 per year, and ongoing subsidies not to exceed $10,000 per year in case management services.
Correct.
But like, how much money are we spending on that? Do they need more money?
So as part of that, there's two groups of both have done. Veteran done report attached to that where there was detailed analysis of if, based off of their research, interviews, and other things, how much that would cost. I can't recall the number. It was quite large, but what was presented to council was start first with 8 million, see first if the demand is actually there, or if you provide emergency assistance for a short time, if that would actually reduce the number of unlawful detainers or vice versa. That was what was presented to council's first seeing with that 8 million, what the demand actually is.
And that's underway now, or?
That's the research we're doing right now. So we're hoping to have that started in 12 to 18 months. The flexible financial assistance program, how it's proposed, is really, we're seeing not as much as we thought there would be of examples. So we're speaking to other jurisdictions like San Francisco, we're speaking to LA City and county. We've had a few of those interactions, but we welcome, if there's any committee members that would like to be part of that, to help us research and help with that program design, we definitely welcome that.
Because I think part of the disclosure and the transparency is if some of what the voters were told isn't in fact accurate, and the allocations are dependent on, at least, I have an argument that it's all flexible, but I don't want to waste money on stuff that's not needed. And so, but I just think it's important for people to know and understand. And maybe it's a situation where it isn't as big an issue of people needing money for emergency rent, and there are other greater needs that we should be focusing on.
Just to be clear about one thing, there's no category for emergency rent. There's a category for ongoing or emergency rental assistance. The whole point of the pod program, so at least as one of the proponents, the idea that there are people who are low income and paying more than 50% of their rent, even if they're somehow never change the struggle and not get evicted, that to me is an unacceptable situation that we would also want to address. In fact, the reason LA City's mayor, even LA, has 10% of its money going to a rent subsidy program is because I was one of the people involved at the beginning of that process and showed the economic benefits of how you can move people for a lot less than, as you say, building new things. So if the money isn't needed for the rental assist, for the emergency rental assistance, if we really find that to be true, then we can go to that. But I can also tell you, because I represent a tenant in Santa Monica, who will not be able to keep it on unless she gets that. And even before the city did, there already was money being used for emergency rental assistance. So it sounds like one of the things we need to do is to get a presentation on all of this for folks.
And when in the measure it talks about ongoing or emergency income assistance, that how do you define that? Does that mean
Well, ongoing would be something like the pod program, which was meant to, which is an ongoing, you get it every month, where it allowed people to get a basic after rent income, the basic standard for people to live after your rent. Emergency assistance is exactly that for people who are facing addiction or something else, because there's a lot of data out there in the world that, you know, a significant portion of addictions is tied to the fact that somebody doesn't have enough legislature increase of the 3-day notice to 14 days, which I think the Senate did pass. The city of Somerville made it easier to treat because being someone who represents the private tenants and this stuff, one of the problems is if they don't get to a lawyer to the city or something that tells them about this, once a 3-day notice is arrived, you know, it's too late to do anything.
And the requirement that landlords file with the city attorney that they are giving eviction notice, is that? I mean, I know you can read reports because the city attorney says, okay, this many eviction notices were filed, but I've also read that people think a lot of people have a lot of report to the city.
We have a consumer unit with 2 attorneys that are ex-conflict attorneys, and so they're very well versed in information. If you would like them to come, one of them come to give some presentation, you can make that request.
I'm also certain that if you want to talk to them before the next meeting,
Yeah.
they just be happy to talk to you.
There's
I
also
know.
a problem with the city attorney, units not being compliant.
Yeah, I'm happy to have us move up the learning curve as quickly as possible by breaking into small units and then just giving a short report back of what we found out so that all of us are as up to speed as possible without having to have long meetings.
Okay, so, I think, oh, sorry. Yeah, you're right, actually. Yeah.
Well, we're kind of going past that at this point, but when we talk about building 40,000, I just wanted to mention that we need to be creative in terms of how we build that housing. Doesn't necessarily have to be standard apartment building on a corner which people concern has actually done in the downtown area, shipping containers and other forms of prefabricated. Units that place one on top of the other that lowers the cost of signature. But that's something that I think Santa Monica has walked out.
Yeah, I'm not certain about the blocking part, but I completely agree with you that we ought to have presentation from alternative things and also a presentation of what the real cost savings are. I also know that Flyaway Home is, that's one of the private, social equity funds, private finances, and they also use shipping containers, I know, but at least when I found that save something, but which it adds up, but it's not as huge as one would hope, but we should definitely all of those alternatives are really great.
Well, I think it,
So then I think Wade,
What about commercial, takeover of commercial properties that are in, that have gone bankrupt or whatever, or vacant, or things like that?
conversion from
Conversion?
housing.
Yeah, is that something Santa Monica has looked into, or is it?
It's certainly, to me, that's another thing that could be talked about, from what I've read in the press, that also has significant economic challenges too, but I think these are all exactly the kinds of things, rather than everybody sort of having an idea, I think we could be useful trying to really drill down and get people in who really know about those things and talk to us about it, present real data.
Great. And I just want to say, I did look at the dashboard. I have looked at the dashboard many times, and I'm still trying to figure out the numbers.
No, I understand.
And the other thing was, I don't think I labeled it correctly. It's the Samo Bridge program. The Samo Bridge, where they bring the homeless people in and they give them a choice between a 90-day program, maybe shipping them off to a different city or something, or they have to go to jail at some point.
I think you mean the diversion. I mean, I don't know what the name is, but you mean
Salmon
the diversion
diversion.
program.
Yes, has that opened?
Yes.
It has opened. I'd love to
They're still
hear,
connecting the sewer with their water lines, yes, it's eventually will be completely connected, there will be showers.
and that takes, I'd like to know more about that program also. If we could.
I was gonna, well, one question I have is how the, allocation percentages are measured, right? Which we're saying a minimum of 50% has to be spent on production, a minimum of 30% on rental assistance. Is that like measured on an annual basis, multiple years? Like how does that?
It's in the balance chart, I believe it's
Fairly certain
annually.
it says annually.
I believe it's annually, but then that amount will
Yeah,
be
it is
over.
annually.
So if the city receives 10 million, let's just say year one, 50% of that is 5 million. But if it's not used in that entirety in that year, then it would just roll over to the next year. So if 2 million was used, then 3 million would just roll over to the next year, is my understanding of it.
But we kind of stay in that category that it's been
Correct.
allocated to.
So there are two things. One is, I think in subsection D, it gives more flexibility if it's not spent in a year. That was trying to be, the drafter, I would say that there would be a little bit of wiggle room if there was leftovers at the end of the year. And obviously, LA has this problem because you can't spend the money to build unless you have a program for building. And so they're worrying about, reallocating and resetting and this kind of stuff. So I think it's really imperative that these people are open-minded to have some flexibility if the world either isn't what people thought it was when they voted for this or has changed, so that you're not feeling, I have to burn X amount of dollars in this way, even if it's a waste of money, because there's this restriction. So, and they've talked, in some of the ULA stuff, they talk about rebalancing, and obviously if you had a good program, and you should try and keep it going, even, and that's probably why having a reserve would allow you to say, if we find something that's really working, and we happen to have a bad year where there aren't big transactions, we shouldn't have to shut it down that year. And hopefully when we get more years under our belt, we'll be able to say, okay, we can pretty much guarantee X dollars. But I think there's going to be, just set aside money for building that doesn't get spent in the early years. LA has that, it's just sitting there.
So I guess I just wanted, so there'll be a time of year, every year, when we are told what the amount is that's available for us to be allocating to certain programs, and then to your point, right, like, at the end of that term, we're looking at what's gotten spent and what hasn't.
So to be clear about one thing, we don't allocate anything. All we can do is make recommendations to city council. We do not have authority to spend any money. But yes, it is on an annual basis, 50% of the money has to go towards affordable housing preservation and creation. 30% has to go to ongoing or emergency. Rental assistance, 20% is left for a whole host of other things, I believe.
But you don't actually have to spend it, that we haven't spent it, we have $22 million.
But I believe that's it.
But then when you actually start spending, if there is a program that's set up, you might have 3 years worth of reserves for that purpose.
So just to be clear, so we'll have the law correct here. So at least no less than 50% goes to the affordable housing creation, preservation, acquisition, all those kinds of things. Anyway, but it says, in addition to the extent that funds allocated to ongoing or emergency income assistance pursuant to that for a particular fiscal year are not spent during that fiscal year due to under subscription of the council took this was since they didn't know what was going on with the money and they had to form the commission and all those things, they're treating this year one as the first year, so that's the year that they're allocating year one now, and I think that's a legitimate way to look at this. And they are saying they're putting that money into that program. So year two would be, I guess we know what year two amount of money is because it's come in. So that's what we could be recommending about for this year, and then we can recommend next year about that.
But then for this year, we know because they hit the 10 million from the schools and they have $1 million extra. Like every month we'll know how much money is coming in. So you'll be able to project saying, look, looks like it's gonna be this amount of money,
But I think it's almost just the opposite, right? I think this is one of the things that's kind of interesting, and to your point about what the HRNA report says, and it would be great if we could see that report, is that, you create programs, you create new programs in particular, so that you can continue to fund them. And it's just, I think this is an interesting situation where we're like not going to be clear. And it just leads me to think about us needing to be really thoughtful about investing resources into a whole new program when we don't have a consistent funding source, right? It's hard for the city to not have a consistent funding source. It's hard for like whatever provider might be getting the money. So I don't know, it just seems very tricky.
But I think it's knowable over time, and I think that if you look at the HRNA report, they said, okay, it varied. Some years it was 15 and some years it was 100, that we'll be able to say, given the reserves that we now have that haven't been spent, we will be able to say you can spend 10 or 15 a year pretty much forever, given the way the money comes in. And if there's a windfall year where all of a sudden, there was a windfall year in the 10 before this past, where they would have gotten $100 million. So I think you also have to prepare, well, what happens if there's a windfall year? The opposite of what you're saying. You're worried about what happens if you have a bad year. But I think it's probably knowable, and because the LA numbers, you can look at the LA numbers and see that it jumps up and down, but they're making money every year. They've collected $700 million. It's not an unknowable revenue source. There will be transactions, and LA moves it up because of inflation every year. Santa Monica did, so it's capped, right, it's at 8 million. I don't worry that I think once you study the numbers of what's happened over the first 2.5 years, and look at the number of buildings and the number of houses, there'll be some comfort level that this is going to be a continuing revenue source. You don't want to overspend numbers, but
so I sort of agree with both of you, actually. I think, the city council, before we reformed, went ahead and did what they did. I think it would be prudent to be building a reserve fund precisely for this purpose. I hear your point that, well, but we have people who need help right now, so maybe we just spend what we have. But that's the only way you can smooth it. You can smooth it out. The city has other revenue sources. They don't have to always fund these programs through this measure. They also could, now that I believe this year they've decided they're going to stop diverting the 2016 measure of GSH funds and leave them in the Housing Trust Fund, which is what the voters advised, but that was not, although they hadn't promised to repay what they've taken. But that's another source of money that could be used to backfill that. But I do think we have to proceed for something like ongoing rent subsidy, which is something where where if you're going to put people in the program, you got to be funding it because you're not going to kick them out. It's different. An emergency rent subsidy, it's whatever you have or whatever is needed that year. And for anything we're going to do around construction, some of these other things can vary. But you're right, we are going to have a challenge, and there is less flexibility here to move things around, and that was intentional because of the experience folks who were intimately involved in Measure GS and GSH, and getting that passed, were extremely disappointed. And, you know, there's something in the city, probably was about $40 million to the housing trust fund right now. You know, we're less than 100,000 people. LA's, you know, over 4 million people. So for us, those numbers are huge. So it's important to have something that
Is
the money has to go to these purposes.
Is there like an account somewhere that says this is the homeless prevention and affordable housing fund that was set up for GS? And could I go and check how much is in there?
I think that the numbers you just saw, I don't know how the city set up the accounting, but that is what you saw, that is that.
So there should be 29 million minus whatever they've spent of the 7.
It's in several, how it's split up, I have to check with our finance team, but I think there's several accounts. It's not just one account, because there's affordable housing development, it's already pre-split up. So the money's there.
It's just, Wade's point or question before is, it's very hard when you look at this stuff. I don't really know. I took from your presentation that they allocated 7 million and they haven't spent more than a couple $100,000 of the 7 million. And you said, well, 12 or 18 months, they might spend the 7 million.
Because, yeah, that's correct, because the Right to Counsel program, that exists, and we have the framework for that. But the flexible financial program, there's no framework for that, so that needs to be, the program needs to be designed, the vulnerability index, there's a whole host of things that staff's working on as quickly as possible to roll it out, but it is gonna take 12 to 18 months.
Right, but I think in terms of our oversight, being transparent with voters, I think the simple question of how much money came in and how much has been spent is a question that we ought to be able to answer. We ought to understand it from this committee and then the people of San Juan also do. It's not that complicated.
It's more than that. There's a requirement in the law that it be audited every year, and that be publicly presented to both the city council and this commission.
So is that going on?
That's a good question. We have to find, yeah, that is a good question. Yeah.
So, are there programs with many of these hotels, to, as you say, it's hard to build affordable housing. So the more programs that we have with the hotels, we could get homeless people in those hotels. Is there a program like Inside Safe here in Santa Monica? And if so, you know how much they spend on that per person? And if you have money left over at the end of the year, you could just hand out to some of the homeless people for them to pay rent somewhere. I don't. You see?
I don't know the answer to that.
The hotel programs for
I don't know.
vacancies and homeless. You know,
I don't know.
are there any numbers on that?
I can't speak to that.
I know there are some of these motels that homeless people, that formerly homeless people, low-income people live in.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. I can get the information if that culture is gonna be form its recommendations.
Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
Some of the hotels have contracts with providers. So it's not necessarily with the city, it's with whoever the service providers are. Will have clients who need,
Like
housing.
people concerned, or, so they are the ones,
They have, I don't know the extent of it now, they have in the past had a contract with some of these hotels that on a, for, I don't know, anywhere from 2 weeks to 3 or 4 months, somebody could be in the hotel and off the street until they were able to arrange whatever it was they were working on. They were waiting for their apartment to be, for the new apartment to be inspected, waiting for their money to come in.
and that's run by the county or the city or here?
Contract, it was just a contract that we
was helping with the belongings.
So, my sense is I have a pretty good idea of what people are interested in, so we can plan our next meeting. Like, so I think the question is, should we create a subcommittee of people who are interested in working with, we've been invited by staff to participate in helping structure this, the flexible finance, what's it called?
Flexible financial assistance.
Flexible financial assistance.
And right to counsel.
And right to counsel portion of this. So I think that, Bruce, you're interested in doing that, a committee, are there others? Okay, Renee? Okay. John, right?
Yes.
Okay. Next time I'll have to write the names down, last names on here. Okay, so, that sounds good.
So I have 3, is that correct?
Right.
I have 3.
Yes.
First, sorry, just want to make sure.
And I think probably, at the moment, I probably want to be, because I'm representing somebody. I'm representing, in my capacity as a lawyer, a Santa Monica resident who's seeking rental assistance from the city, so I probably should not be on the committee. So I think we have 3 people, and that sounds good.
And the subcommittee,
Can
we
we,
have a Zoom
next
meeting?
time, sit a little closer to each other so we can hear each other better and not be so
Yeah.
spread out?
Yes, they can. It's an ad hoc, as long as it's an ad hoc committee, temporarily formed, you don't have to comply with the Brown Act.
Okay, so
Then
I'm gonna
that's
make a
what we-
formal motion that we form that subcommittee with John, Renee, Bruce, on it. So is there a second to that?
Technically, subcommittee formation is not on the agenda, but I think this is.
It's not part of the work plan?
Context, and then next time we'll formalize the subcommittee creation.
Okay,
Through documenting it, so we can.
Okay. but between now and the next time, they can actually start interacting with each other, the city.
So then
Okay.
just for our knowledge, when we're doing the agenda, should say subcommittee.
Formation of subcommittees, and then after that, what we do is we list the subcommittee meetings, and usually we report out on the subcommittee.
Okay. Should we form a subcommittee? Should we technically, see who's interested in a subcommittee now on the affordable housing creation piece of this, whatever we want to call it, or should we wait for the next meeting? Assuming you're interested in this?
I guess, for me, it's really important to just better understand the existing programs that the city has, how much money we're spending, how many people are getting served, like.
Well, that we can just agendize for the next meeting.
No, I understand that, but to me, it's like hard to kind of go to the next step unless we understand
Okay.
what's already happening.
Fair enough, I think I'm probably a little further up the learning curve than most people.
I think it would be helpful just on the staff side, because the fund kind of encompasses several divisions, and maybe this is, I've taken down a lot of notes of what people want to know, but maybe chair and vice chair
Yeah.
or grading it, we can kind of strategize on what we want to be presented on right away.
Yeah.
And then what can be further down.
Right, well, we will work on it. That's up to you, what we think, we've heard here tonight, what people want for the next meeting.
Okay, great.
Which, if we do have a remote option, are you?
Yes, I can do it remotely, I just
Okay.
can't be here.
So then, let's see if we can do the,
Okay.
which means that we might better, it doesn't have to be tonight, obviously, but we ought to relatively quickly come up with what we're interested in. So we can figure out what's realistic for folks to be able to give us a better review.
So that next meeting would be
I'm going out.
July 7th? Did you say you're out of town?
Yeah.
Oh.
Not for the meeting.
Well, presumably, email works, so,
I'm back on the 23rd.
okay, that's, okay. Okay, is there anything else anybody wants to talk about with that?
Anything I should study between, she's going to, Natalie, you're going to send
Yeah.
some things that you,
So what I'll send to everyone, PCC succeed, just in compliance with the Brown Act, is I'll send the March 11th staff reports, which also includes the Fetterman-Dunn study that was used to help inform the rights of counsel and the flexible financial assistance. The HRNA analysis on the Measure GS, I believe that was a request. And then I also will be looking into information about new remotes for the July 7th meeting.
And you were to include the strategic plan.
Oh, the whole strategic, thank you. And then I also will reach out to the three that were interested in the subcommittee to help get them included in our research where we are.
And is there an existing contract with Laszlo on the right to counsel?
We have an existing contract, but this will be expanding it. So this, yeah, there is an existing one.
And how do tenants find out about it?
Through referrals, through contacting them, through, they contact the housing division or the human services division, or other service providers.
Let me know how I don't know, how I can best help with the, find out information, whatever. Let me know what I can do.
Great, okay, well then I think that concludes that, and we can adjourn. Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Did everyone take parking validation?
But I believe I need to get that parking garage. Yes.
Still not, right, still.
And then- These are copies.
And this one.
Have official. Put it up on the wall. Yeah, frame it.
Oh, no,
I'm working with like a casing member.
That is, it's yours.
Somebody else, it's almost the same.
Yeah, I know, it's like, it's weird.
Nice to
Nice
meet you.
to meet you.
Good night. Nice to meet you.
That's your copy.
Well,
Show it to the
you were
kids.
wrong, so maybe that's why.
Thank you very much.
No, yeah, we'll definitely,
Let me know how I can help.
Yeah.
All of this.
yeah, and I.
Meet you.
Good to meet you, Bruce.
See you on the promenade.
I think
Yes.
the, getting a, baseline.
I'm usually on the promenade at night, these days, when it's a little quieter, but, since I'm not running for anything. Nice to meet you, Renee. Nice to meet you. Anujan. 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 A-N-U-J-A-N?
Yeah.
Anujan.
Easier than.
The last name looks intimidating, but it's actually.
Jivravash.
Great job.
Thank you, Tom.
Pleasure to meet you.
Oh, wait, what about your phone?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that
I'll probably take that. I would have figured it out.
It's like, it's gonna be locked after we leave, so I don't want you to not have it.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful night.
You too.
Are you heading to the promenade now?
Well, I'm gonna get something to eat first. I'll see. Yeah, probably so. I'll be live streaming from the promenade in just about a half hour. Thank you.